city.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's September 19th, 2013. Another live edition of DTRH. And tonight, I am joined by one of my good friends who I have not had the chance to sit and tear apart all this insanity with since leaving my previous network. And I actually kind of miss picking her brain because her and her other half are, I like to call them the truth dynamic duo power couple. You know, I'm still trying to think of a good nifty power couple name for the two of them. But anyway, joining me back for 2 hours tonight is my good friend Melissa Melton. Melissa, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
And well, first of all, thank you for coming back on. I know you're a little under the weather. Everybody seems to be getting sick.
Well, school started back up, and so there's just germs everywhere. But I'm good. I'm ready to rant about this though, because this story is just crazy.
Well, you know, you and I were talking about this off air. This whole Navy Yard shooting thing, and the past couple of days I haven't touched it, and I think by now my listeners kind of understand that certain times, and if it's depending on the situation, depending on the media coverage, but there are certain times, certain things, I'll wait a day or two before I discuss them, and You mean you don't want to jump right into saying every single thing that happens is a conspiracy? You read.
I don't like to do that either. No, I mean, I didn't even want to talk about this because as soon as it happened, I went, great. What are they trying to distract us from? And what are they doing in the background?
Well, that's what I thought. I thought maybe this thing's another distraction. It's going to be the same, along the same lines. But there's a lot of weirdness to this whole thing. The whole thing. I mean, just looking at it the past couple of days, I mean, the initial coverage, I was like, okay. That night I put a video together. Yeah, well, that night I put a video together exposing how Piers Morgan was lying because he was on air that night screaming. I mean, all emotional. It's an AR-15. It's an AR-15. It's an illegally purchased AR-15. And that wasn't true. In fact, the next day, the FBI came out and did a presser. And if you watched it, the lady that was talking, and I forget her name, she said that she said that the media has been putting out all different types of information, and it's wrong. She didn't say the alternative media. She didn't say social media. She didn't say Facebook, YouTube, conspiracy theorists. She said the media. she was referring to the douche canoes at CNN and MSNBC.
Pierce Morgan must be like a douche rocket. He's at a whole nother level of that chain. But definitely, I mean, the guy was throwing a fit. He was freaking out because people were pointing out the fact that military installations are, for the most part, gun-free zones. And really, if it's not secure there, then where can it possibly be secure? If that place isn't safe, they can't make that place safe, where there's the headquarters of multiple naval commands. If that place isn't safe, I mean, it's already a gun-free zone for the most part, other than the MPs that secure, the perimeter and whatnot. So having more gun control is not going to help.
Those MPs, you might as well have a gun-free zone, because their weapons are useless. Oh, see, most people don't know this, but a lot of times MPs don't have ammunition for their guns. See, they're told that the presence of the weapon alone will scare somebody. How is that scary? That's the same reason why the Cole got hit. That USS Cole, when it got bombed, it's the same reason. Because the security team, that were the watchstanders that were outside on board the ship, they didn't have any ammunition in their weapons.
Well, so do they just walk around with shotguns making that chick sound all the time? Just
we
make the sound enough. I know, I'm kidding.
But I mean, there was, see the interview, CNS News, I think it was, did an interview with, they were interviewing this dude, and his son was one of the Marines I guess he's an MP there at the base. And his son told him, we're trained to go clear rooms. We're Marines. That's what we do, right? That's what they're trained for, combat, urban combat, right? These guys are the guards on the base. They've all gone through combat training. They've all gone through infantry training. They know how to do this probably better than the cops do. All right, that's what they do. They're Marines. You then give them a machine gun. I'm not going to. We'll just say a rifle. I don't even want to use the term machine gun because it's not a fully automatic machine gun. We'll just say rifle that can shoot either fully automatic or, in some cases, 3-round burst or semi-auto. But you're going to give them this gun that they've now trained with and they're proficient with and they can clear a room with. And then you're going to make them guard a building, a Navy building, right, where there's Navy personnel, Marines, civilians. But you're not going to give them any ammunition for the weapons. Well, why would you not give these guys ammunition? Well, they could have gotten shot. What happens if the shooter shot at them? Well, they're Marines. That's their job, is to engage in combat, okay? Let me reiterate, their job is Marines, okay? Do one thing proficiently, kill everything in their path, okay? Why would you not let them loose on this douche canoe with the gun running around shooting people? Oh, no. No, we have to make things worse. And then they turn away the Capitol Police. There was the SWAT Capitol Police comes and they get the stand down. What?
That is the newest story that I just reported on today up at True Stream Media, because when I saw the BBC reporting that, I was like, okay. I mean, the thing is this whole thing, every time one of these things happens and they push it to the forefront of the mainstream media and they're ramming it into the collective consciousness of the American people just over and over 24/7, right? Then I automatically tense up, because there are things that happen in this country all the time that don't get that kind of attention, that are at that level or worse. And they don't get that kind of publicity. So when that happens, I automatically don't trust it. But I don't automatically go, and it's a conspiracy, and it was totally set up, and everyone in there is a crisis. I mean, I don't go there. And I didn't even want to talk about this, because I felt like it was a distraction, considering all the stuff with Syria blew up in our government's face so bad, and they were completely embarrassed on a international stage. But the stuff that has come out surrounding this shooting is just one piece of evidence after another that the whole thing is staged. I mean, basically, the entire officialist story is basically crackling apart underneath the feet of the officials. I mean, it is ridiculous at this point. And yes, today I saw that Navy Yard SWAT team stood down at mass shooting, and they're talking about how they've had multiple sources tell them this over at the BBC, but they want to remain anonymous because they are for fear of reprisal. But that's what these guys did. They were the Containment and Emergency Response Team. It was a 4-man team. That's what they did. They have HK-416 long-range assault weapons, and they were near that area 5 minutes after he was reported being there. They could have been there in 10 minutes.
CERT teams, the ones that get all the neat, nifty gear that you see them riding around in the black vehicles. We need the SWAT team for cases where there's an active shooter, unless we actually have an active shooter.
That's what they're trained for. That's what they're trained for. That's their whole freaking job. It's part of it.
But think about that.
WMDs and all that other stuff. But that's their job. And they were within 5 minutes of this location because their whole area is just the D.C. area, that little area right there. The capital area, that's their thing. And they were within 5 minutes of this. So he got there around 8:15. The call came in about 8:20. So they could have been there within 10 minutes of him opening fire, and yet he wasn't taken out until after 9 o'clock. And 12 people are dead.
Yeah, they're even admitting on mainstream media which is somewhat surprising. But they're admitting that since this came out, they obviously have to talk about it because it's out somewhere. Some portion of the mainstream picks it up, kind of forces the rest of them to talk about it. It's going to be interesting to see how they try to twist this.
For real,
over the next few days. But what are they going to say? It's being admitted that lives would have been saved and less people would have died had that team been allowed to engage the shooter. And why aren't the cops engaging shooters? Why are cops such sissies? Well, he could have a rifle. So? You guys have rifles. Why do you have to wait for a SWAT team every time there's a situation where there's a shooter, the guy has a gun, we need the SWAT team? It's become standard operating procedure suddenly for cops that they can't engage somebody with a gun. They have to call in SWAT, and they have to have an armed friggin' standoff. So it justifies the use of the SWAT team. That's what that is. It's ridiculous.
Basically.
Why do cops carry guns then? Cops shouldn't have guns. If they're not going to engage shooters themselves, and if the MPs on the base aren't going to be allowed to have ammo for their weapons, then you're going to have to find somebody else that will be allowed to have ammo. That's the only way you're going to be safe.
It's security theater. The whole thing is security theater. We live in a country that is trying so desperately, ever since especially 9/11, to purchase security, to purchase safety. We have insurance for our insurance in this country. We have the additive that goes with your laundry detergent to make it better. We have the additive that goes with your antidepressants to make them work better, that Abilify, right? We all have all this stuff that you add to things to make those things do the things they're supposed to do, because the whole country is just based on being afraid everything's not going to work and trying to make themselves safe and protected and everything works right and everything's great. And if I can just buy enough stuff and give up enough of my rights, then maybe I'll be safe. But it's all an illusion, basically.
Well, it is.
That's a whole rant, but it is. It's an illusion.
But that's what they're telling. Look, they're saying. You see, Piers Morgan have these AR-15s. They make everybody unsafe. If on a military base where they have armed security, he was attacking his guests. You guys say that armed security is the answer. It's obviously not, because this guy still got past them. No, if you had given the Marines on the base, who make up some of the armed security on the base, had you given the Marines actual ammunition for their guns, then you would have had this problem solved in less than 5 minutes. I can guarantee you, any well-trained Marine and two of his buddies, one by himself could have taken the guy out, but I guarantee you there would have been at least 2 or 3 of them in there, and they would have taken the guy out. And maybe one of them would have gotten shot. You know what? Again, they're Marines. They signed up to get shot at and fight and possibly die. That's their job. So why not give these highly proficient, highly trained individuals the ammo for the weapon that you're putting in their hand? That makes no sense. That's like giving you an axe and then taking the blade off the axe. Or just the wooden handle.
Chop down a tree.
Yeah, here's the wooden handle to the axe. Go chop down that big tree, but I need the axe head. No. The axe head could come flying off and land on your foot and hurt you.
If people don't want to get into some of the other stuff we're about to talk about in this broadcast, even if just the people that were watching television hear that the specifically trained emergency response and containment team, the containment emergency response team that was specifically trained for active shooters, was there and could have been there in 10 minutes, within 10 minutes of the guy going into that building 197 there, it could have been there in 10 minutes. They had those long-range, HK-416 assault weapons. They could have been on it. This would have been over. There wouldn't have been this many people dead. Where else have we heard before that they were told to stand down. I'm pretty sure Virginia Tech had a similar thing going on, and I know everyone knows about 9/11. I mean, we have these events where suddenly there's a stand down order and nobody knows why, and it's just more people end up dead. And where's the outcry for stuff like that? Anytime somebody hears the stand down order thing happen, that's the whole reason these people exist, is to do this job. And they were told, nah, go, get a coffee or something. I mean, and then people are dead.
They should have disobeyed. Honestly, see that this.
Wouldn't you?
This is I would. Yeah, I would have been fired and this is why I used to get in trouble, because there was a certain line, and honestly, they're trained differently. Because I can honestly tell you, when I was in, we were trained right from boot camp. We were told, look, you have to, you have to listen to what your commanding officer says to you. And we brought it up with the drill instructors. What happens if we're ordered to do something illegal? That we know, or we know that is not a good idea. Like say the captain makes a bad decision, or has made his mind up, made a decision, and maybe I know that that's really detrimental to me and others around me, and it's a really bad decision. Do I still have to follow that order? Well, no, you don't. So these guys, I understand it's their job and everything else, but I'm going to tell you what. If it's already coming out that you guys were ordered to stand down, right? And that'll forever be on your conscience. What you should have done was just gone out and said to your watch commander, suck it, and gone in and cleared the building and taken the scumbag out, and then gone and dealt with the repercussions later on. And I guarantee you the general public would have stood behind you, okay?
You would have probably been a hero at that point if you would have done that. You would have saved lives, which is supposed to be your whole job. I mean, it's amazing to me that I would never listen to an order like that. I mean, following orders is not a good excuse. And now these people have to sleep at night with that. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they would. It's terrible.
Well, I mean, I give them credit for coming out, because obviously they're pissed.
At least somebody is speaking out, even on condition of anonymity. At least someone's saying something about this. And it was more than one someone. It was several people that came forward. It was several Capitol Police officer sources. So there are multiple sources in there that know this was messed up, and they're speaking out about it. And obviously, I mean, even if you would love to believe the system loves you and just wants to keep you safe, and it's all about you and your safety, seeing a story like this, how does anybody look at that and go, oh, I guess that's okay? They must have had a reason. They must have had a reason for doing that that's totally justifiable, and now 12 people are dead. I mean, I don't even know how anyone can logically justify this story. It's ridiculous.
Well, you can't.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
So now you have to look at the agenda behind it, because obviously there's an agenda behind it. There's the only next logical thought.
Well, that's what happens when one uses logic, Melissa, and you look at a situation like this and you go,
I need to go back to watching Dancing with the Stars and just not read the news anymore.
Well, how many people? I mean, how many people probably bought into the emotional rants from MSNBC and from CNN, screaming, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! It's an AR-15! Oh my God! It's legally purchased!" And by the way, I made this point in the video I made, that little video I put together about Piers Morgan. If his crew knew that he bought the gun from a gun store in Virginia, then they would know it wasn't an AR-15.
Yeah.
Okay, if they were able to go back and the only thing that they would have they wouldn't have known. First of all, the only information that would have come up was it doesn't say when you buy guns. Okay, and this is how it is in Florida, and I know most of the other states are like this, unless some states make you register the gun, but most of the states, you buy a gun, when they do the background check and they call the ATF, they don't call the ATF and say, here is the gun is a 12 gauge Remington semi-automatic or pump shotgun, whatever, and model number blah 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 blah, serial number blah 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 blah. They don't go into that. They just say long gun or handgun. They don't even say whether it's a revolver or a semi-automatic pistol. They just say long gun or handgun. Okay? So, first of all, I have two questions. One, and this is how you know he's a liar, if his research crew looked into it and they found that they saw, say they got the information somehow from the government, because the government, went back and they saw the background check and it said long gun. Well, it only says long gun. That could be a shotgun or a rifle. It could be, any type of long gun. So if they only went based off of that, they're lying and just throwing the AR-15 out there to demonize it. Now, if they went one step further and maybe contacted the owner of the store, and the owner of the store went through his records, the owner of the store would say, no, that man didn't purchase an AR-15, he purchased a shotgun. So at either level, there's no indicator, at the upper level of just looking at the back, if they just found out the government's information on the background check, it would just say long gun. So that's not an indicator of anything, okay? That could be any type of rifle, from hunting rifle to an AK-47, okay? It doesn't mean anything. It's not indicative of crap. So if they went further, they would have found that it was a shotgun. So on that upper level, they were just blaming the AR-15 with no type of, any type of proof or anything. They were just outright talking point blaming it. And then if they did any research even deeper, they would have seen it was a shotgun, and they still would have had to have been lying. So either way, it wasn't a slip-up. It was an outright lie and a talking point being pushed to demonize a certain type of weapon. I didn't hear them say AK-47. No, they kept saying AR-15 because the AR-15, according to Piers Morgan, is the choice weapon of mass killers because it's a highly proficient weapon. Let me explain something. You can get an AK-47, a semi-automatic version, which is the same thing that an AR-15 is, but except it's a semi-automatic rifle, except that the AK-47 actually has a bigger round. It's got 7.62 round, as opposed to the 5.56 or
more damage
2.23 round. So it's actually a bigger round, and yet that's not the choice weapon of mass killers. No,
Piers Morgan is such an asset. I mean, he really must be, because, well, about all the scandal that followed him from the UK doesn't even want him back. He was involved in all kinds of wiretapping and reporting over there, and they don't even want him back. But the thing is, why is this British dude so invested in our gun laws? Like, what is his deal with that anyway? I mean, every time you go to his Twitter account, he's got a picture of himself up, like, hugging Obama and stuff. It's just ridiculous. The guy is so obvious. It's sad. I mean, we fought for independence from that country. We don't need that dude coming over here telling us what to do with our Bill of Rights,
Seriously.
Just so sick of that guy. My last job, I had to write so many articles about him, it just made me want to puke. Like, I just cannot stand him. It's almost like a high-pitched sound that only dogs can hear. It's like that horrible sound in your brain, and then Piers Morgan. It's like those two things are on the list right there together.
He's a real turd. And what's funny is I didn't know who he was. And then I didn't even know anything about him. This is before he came over here. I took over Larry King's spot. I was reading David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret. This is probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And in that book, he references Piers Morgan, because Piers, I guess, had interviewed him years ago. And he exposed Piers back then in that book as, a total media mouthpiece shill, for basically what we see him as now. And I had remembered the name, and I was like, wow, that's because the name, you don't hear a name like Piers Morgan all the time. It's not a common name, so that name just stuck in my head for some reason. And about 6 or 8 months later is when, or maybe about a year later, is when they made the announcement that Larry King's going to be retiring, and they started throwing out the names that they might, this is before they even, finalized it, and his name came up, and I was like, Piers Morgan, didn't Ike talk about him? And I went back and I looked and I was like, oh wow, he did. And I called it. I was like, this guy's going to be nothing but a turd, watch. And there were people who were like, oh, maybe there'll be a change, getting out with the old, getting a younger guy in there. Because, Larry King was kind of an embarrassment too. RT picked him up, and the guy is just, okay, he's been in media, forever, but really? He can't even hold a conversation with somebody, Melissa. I'm not bashing him. I just don't like Larry King. The guy asks the most, he asks the most softball
He's kind
questions.
of a triangle, Larry King.
He's
a triangle of a human being. He just looks very triangular. I don't know. I told everybody, hey, I've got a cold. Just give me an out. But seriously.
She's been drinking cough medicine, ladies and gentlemen. No.
Actually, I'm having a chocolate shake right now. because I'm giving myself a present for feeling like crap.
Nice.
But yeah, no, the man does to me look like basically he's very angular. He just looks very angular.
He's like, he asks the most irrelevant questions. He really does.
He really does.
You ever watch any of his, like, I have an in-depth interview with so-and-so, and you'll be like, all right, well, somebody got this person on, and then he'll ask them, like, so what color shoes do you put on in the morning? And you're like, really, Larry? That's what you're going to ask the guy? You know, like, the guy could have, like, I don't know, he could have stolen all the gold in Fort Knox, you know? Maybe we should look into that. Anyway, the guy could have stolen all the gold in Fort Knox or something, right? And been caught red-handed, and Larry King would, like, ask him how he puts his pants on in the morning. One leg at a time, or do you hop right in? Like, really? Like, that's what you're going to ask the guy? That's why he's irrelevant. And then they replace him with Piers Douche-Canoe Morgan, who, I mean, the guy... When everybody was making this uproar, we should deport him, the British were like, we don't want him back. They
were like that.
Every video that somebody was like, we should deport Piers Morgan, there'd be at least one or two people from the UK. No, we don't want him back.
No. Yeah, I wrote a story about that, actually, at my last job at InfoWars. I talked about how he laid out a plan to basically eviscerate our Second Amendment on his Twitter. He just went to task laying it out, right around the Sandy Hook shooting. And I wrote a whole thing on it, and people were like, no, don't make him come back here. We don't want him here. But it was great. It was like...
nobody likes him because he's such a turd. I'm going to pause this because the break is sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 short, quick minutes. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, we were talking about Piers Morgan and his...
Piers Morgan.
Yes, Piers Morgan and his...
He's very official with his British accent.
Ugh, God. Just because he's got a British accent doesn't make him official. First of all, I personally know, like, way more intelligent British people that I would rather have in that news media spot. Like, people that I know, like independent news media, individuals that live in the UK and Scotland that I would rather have getting paid to give me news, because at least they would report on important issues. So if you want to just go by the British accent sounding official, well, I could direct you to some smart people to go check out. You know what I mean? But
when anybody goes on his show to try and actually bring up valid points about how gun control doesn't work, and that his country, there's all kinds of... I did a whole story on the UK's violent crime. I mean, pregnant women getting into cabs are getting stabbed. People are being stabbed. Like, there is a stabbing rampage going on in the UK.
Yeah, they call it
stabbings. Do what?
They call them knife crimes.
Yes, and they have a whole thing for that too. But they don't even... Their data is not even reliable because it's not required that they... there's only certain people that have to report it. So the data is not even reliable. But even the data they have is insane. It's just... You go look at the news and it's like knifings all day long. Just people getting knifed all over the place.
What's their solution, though? You know what their solution is?
They're going to try and ban knives?
Yeah.
That's what I heard. There were chefs that were kind of mad about that.
There's pictures where you can't go into the...
We need common sense on blunt object control.
Aaron! Yes.
Common sense. There's a call for common sense on blunt object control. We need... what's...
You're not going to get through to him. He has antisocial behavior.
Oh, well, whatever. It's almost natural.
It's insane. Like... Well, everything's going to be banned. Pencils, pens. What are they going to do when people start...
Those little nail files that you can bend in half that are like paper.
Are they going to ban plastic bags? Because people suffocate people with plastic bags.
I think they should ban feet. Actually, I wrote a story. I can't remember what it was called, but I think it was like Everything Can Kill You, Ban Everything. Because ultimately, everything can. That's the whole thing. We cannot control the world. We cannot control life. No matter how much safety we purchase, no matter how much of our freedom and liberty we give up, we're never going to be able to control every aspect of everything ever. So, you could live in a padded cell and guaranteed there's a way you'll be able to die in there. Like, just cannot control. There'll be an earthquake and the whole building will collapse on you. Something will happen. And, you cannot control everything. People need to stop focusing on that and actually focus on living their lives. But people aren't doing that.
Some lady was driving minding our own business yesterday on these back streets that happens to cross US 27, which is the back highway that it runs for a portion of South Florida. It runs north and south. Truckers use it to get down into Miami to avoid going through like 95 with all the traffic, because they can get down into Miami. It's like a little back road. It's a highway, but it's smaller than like 95 or something big like Route 80 or something like that. But anyway, this lady's driving down Cross Street, and the cops are chasing a perp who shot 2 people down in Miami. They chase him out of Miami into Broward County, right? Through 2 counties, because they chased him from southern Dade County all the way up through into Broward County. And while he's running from the police and driving erratically, and they're videotaping it with their helicopter, he broadsides this woman's car. She's ejected and killed instantly. 48-year-old mother. Okay, now her husband and her kids now do not have a wife and a mother. She is dead. Okay, do you think that we should now ban police hot pursuits? Do you think that that'll stop every car accident? Do you think we should ban car accidents because the lady was killed in a car accident? Do you see my point? She didn't plan on dying that day. She didn't plan. She was going about her daily business, and some jerk off who killed 2 people already and was running from the cops and being chased by the cops blew through an intersection and broadsided her and killed her. I'm sure she didn't plan on that day. I'm sure her husband and her kids didn't plan on that day. Okay, maybe she wouldn't have gone out if they had known that was going to happen, right? Bad things happen. The law cannot prevent bad things from happening. In fact, in this case, the law was partially involved in making a bad thing happen. They were chasing this guy, and because he was running from the cops and the adrenaline was going, and obviously the guy, I'm not saying the guy's, ultimately responsible for his own actions, but chases do cause things like this. So did the law actually stop anybody? Did Johnny Law actually save anybody's life in this situation, or do you think that actually made things worse? So, and then what do we do in that situation? Do we pass a law where we ban high-speed pursuits, and then how about we just ban car accidents? Because that's really ultimately what killed her, was a car accident, right? So how about we ban car accidents? Oh, but wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, Melissa, because how can you stop a car accident from happening?
I think we should just ban everything. I mean, I wrote the story on it. We should just ban everything, because everything can kill you, ultimately.
Well, in actuality, they're planning on trying to ban car accidents, although I'm sure it will cause some as well, by having computers take over your car, so that when you're driving too fast, for instance, the GPS is going to stop you from being able to control the speed of the car. Did I say GPS? I meant the GPS satellites connected to the computer in the car. They're doing that now in the EU. They're moving towards making that mandatory.
Doesn't that sound fun? So if you want to accelerate and pass someone, you can't do that. You can't go faster than 70 miles an hour ever.
And if you have to accelerate to avoid maybe a deer jumping out of the road or a sudden car swerving in.
It's too bad for you. You get nothing.
Because the only reason people ever want to accelerate, guys, is to speed. Don't you understand that? I mean, the car makers, the engineers, they wouldn't have they wouldn't have played with the levels of acceleration, perhaps because of situations like Aaron just said, with like trying to avoid a deer or something. Yeah, no, they don't think about stuff like that. No, because the lawmakers are the ones that actually take the time to think about all that stuff, right?
That's my thoughts on it. Mm-hmm. They want to keep you safe. I feel very safe about how that's going to work. I think that's terrible. I think people are going to die. But then they'll just put us all in those Google cars that drive themselves, that you can take your hands off the wheel and it's all good and fine, and the car will just drive you.
Right, and when you're wanted for something, the doors just automatically lock and take you to the police station. Right.
Or accidentally wanted, or they've got the wrong person, like happens all the time in these paramilitary raids that are continually botched like every other 5 minutes. Or
what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I thought those things were highly accurate.
Well, I think
that was sarcasm. That was sarcasm, just in case.
Yes, I know. Well, I'm just saying, Pierce Morgan, for all of his whining and crying all over the TV about guns, he has a pretty hardcore agenda he's actually pushing, and he laid it out on his Twitter back in December last year, and he said that he wants to make it to where there are no assault weapons for civilians, period. And everyone will be have tougher gun laws. Everyone. Nobody under 25 at all will have a gun, period. No one. And so we will have no military because nobody under 25 will be allowed to have guns. He would ban them all, he says. In fact, I'd ban all guns for anyone under 25 and make extensive social media checks compulsory for all applicants. So not just your background check. They're going to go in and check your Facebook, your Twitter. They're going to read all about you. I mean, just think of the mountain of paperwork that would follow if Pierce Morgan was in charge of all of these regulations. I mean, it would take you forever and a half to even actually get a gun because they would have to go through your entire life online. Apparently, all gun applications would also require mandatory training courses, 3 references, and detailed vetting over 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, let me ask you a question. How does someone being a reference actually count for anything? I mean, think about it. Even when people ask for that for like jobs, well, I need 3 references. Dude, I could go find 3 people right now, in like 10 seconds that would vouch for me within, 100-foot radius of where I'm sitting.
It doesn't mean anything. I could go get the guy on the corner that holds up the cardboard sign to get people to give him change at the streetlight. I could just give him $1. He would do it. I mean, it means nothing.
He could probably give you an address and a phone number and an official sounding...
It's that safety, illusion of safety thing. It's more of that. It's really our whole society is based on it. It's really ridiculous.
On paper, the guy on the street corner, his name is Thomas Rawlings Crabtree III, Esquire. And they're like, wow, that guy sounds official. And you're like, pfft. It's the guy on the corner of the block. We call him Crazy Charlie or something. You know what I mean? References mean nothing.
They don't mean anything.
That's not a common sense thing. That's a talking point. That's rambling and babbling to push an agenda. That's what he's doing. What other lovely pieces of garbage have come out of this mouth?
Well, he said that no American needs more than 1 firearm at home to protect themselves under the Second Amendment. So I guess...
Really?
Which makes it sound like you only get 1 gun per home. Ever. And he's also said that he would ban all guns for convicted criminals. So that could be a lot of things. It doesn't say felonies or, homicides. It says criminals, period.
And how many people are wrongly convicted? And then that...
Yeah, how many are? Or how many have like a misdemeanor? I guess that counts as well. I mean,
and how
you
long
wrote a bad check one time when you were 20 years old. I guess you're screwed forever? I don't know. I guess you just don't get your rights. But he also goes on to say, and this ties back into our Navy shooter story, anyone with a mental health history whatsoever. And that is very interesting, in my opinion. In fact, that's one of the most horrible things he says in this whole deal, aside from anyone under 25, because that's just ridiculous considering, that would, again, our entire military, well, the whole military, but the majority of our military would disappear if you banned guns for everyone under the age of 25. That's silly. But the mental health history thing, now that is pretty hardcore considering that America takes more antidepressants than any other nation on this planet. We're not the biggest nation, but we take the most antidepressant medications. I think
here's the problem with that.
9 people are on them now.
Here's the problem with
because they give it to you for everything.
Well, here's the problem with the mental health part. When this kind of thing happens, you get the gun community, the pro-gun lobby, like Larry Pratt or somebody, who'll come out and they'll say, well, how come they never talk about the SSRI drugs or anything else? Which is true. But here's the problem. Okay, by demonizing the drugs itself and demonizing mental illness, which is what's happening, they're giving a stigma to mental illness. That's what you see going on. To me, when people say, what kind of agenda could be going on, I don't understand why they would do this and just kill random people, blah, blah. Who are those people? It's part of a much larger agenda. See, what they're doing is they're breaking down the public's will because people like freedom, but people are getting scared and their nerves are frayed. And that's what these mass shootings, they're doing. If you notice, they're spaced out at intervals. They're doing it because just as the public starts to, it's okay, we like guns again, it's not so bad, boom, another one hits. And it brings back all those emotions again, but it's that much stronger because now you have all the past events plus this new one. And then the news media lies like you saw Pierce
like CNN did.
Yep.
And what was the first thing that they were saying when it came out? They were saying that the shooter had an AR-15 plus a rifle plus a Glock. Don't you think it's kind of interesting that in some of these very high-profile shootings, they always have one of each, which happens to be the 3 main types of guns that civilians can get their hands on? Don't you think that's kind of interesting? The Aurora shooter had that. I believe the Sandy Hook shooter had that. I mean, there's a list, and this is there. I had it up somewhere, but I can't find it. But I started looking into it because I think it's very interesting that you have that combo at all of these major mass hyped shootings, and those just happen to be the three kinds of guns people typically get. So
exactly, and the reason
that's what they said.
That's why the AR-15 is a talking point.
Of course. Well, CNN, they had a thing at the bottom of the screen. Aaron was just showing it to me.
AR-15 shotgun?
Yeah, AR-15 shotgun. That's not even a thing. So it's like, but ignorant people watch that and they go, "Yeah, that's a thing. Totally." They don't know any better if they don't know what they don't know.
Well, because people will be confused because if you look up AR-15 shotgun, there is a shotgun that's made that actually looks like an AR-15. The body style looks like an AR-15. It is not an AR-15 shotgun. It does not operate the same way. Okay, it functions differently. It is not the exact same operation. It's not even like a Saiga. A Saiga 12 is a 12 gauge shotgun, semi-automatic shotgun, based off of the AK-47 frame. Operates the same way, except it just shoots 12 gauge shotgun shells instead of 7.62. Okay, the AR-15 shotgun looks, that's important, aesthetically kind of looks like an AR-15, but it's shotgun.
Like the semantics of guns.
Right.
It's like the semantics of guns.
But it's not an AR-15 shotgun. There is no such thing as an AR-15 shotgun. So what they did was they took two weapons, put it together, and put it on there. So they demonized both. Oh my God, a shotgun is an AR-15? Because, in the media, and, an elephant, you could run somebody over with an elephant, and AR-15 used in mass rampage downtown, And they'll digitally delete the elephant going on a rampage, and it'll be a 15-foot AR-15 running around with four legs stomping on it. It's ridiculous. I mean, really, it really is. The AR-15. When you hear them say AR-15, it's because, like Melissa said, and you hit the nail right in the head. It's one of the most popular weapons, and so people understand why. I mean, you could do it with an AK-47 too, but the AR-15, it's more readily available, and it's highly adaptable and modular, so you can play with it, do different things with it, add different things to it. That you can, have a regular combat style rifle. I'm not going to say the other word because it's a made up word. Okay, assault rifle. It's a made up word. So anything can be an assault weapon. By the way, I could assault you with a pencil to your face. Were you going to ban number 2 pencils? So, you can have that. You can have it set up to be. Like with a big beta mag, 100 rounds on the bottom of it. You could have it set up like a sniper rifle. There's a lot of different ways and things you could do with an AR-15. So it's a highly popular gun. And the 223 ammo is cheaper than 7.62. Some people like the AK-47, and there's a lot of those out there as well. But if you notice, they concentrate on one specific type of weapon, and it's always the dreaded AR-15. And Piers Morgan talks about the AR-15 like he even knows what the hell the AR-15 is. First of all, the AR-15 is responsible. The AR-15 is what led to the M16, the gun that the military uses today. The gun was it was invented back in the 60s, okay? Like late 50s, early 60s. Piers doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know his ass from his elbow. So he has a list of talking points, and on it, AR-15's highlighted, and it says next to it in red ink, make bad guy, or whatever, You know what I mean?
Right next to mental health, which is actually pretty nebulous and would basically cut down anyone who's ever had even a little bit of depression, even as a teenager, because they're going to go back and link everyone's medical records and go way back. Anyone who's been in combat, I mean, the list goes on and on and on of what they will consider mental health and how they will use that as a blanket to rob people of their rights. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it goes back to this Navy Yard shooting, which Aaron just pointed out to me a moment ago, is now being taken off of a lot of them. They're starting to get written. They're not even talking about it now in lieu of some of the stuff that's come out.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've seen other stuff, but the past couple days, it's pretty much been the biggest story in the country, or one of them, because they were looking to hype this shooting, as they always do, as you would expect them to do, and debatably, should it have even been a national story? Maybe it was it was a Navy compound, yard or whatever, but today I see zip about it on Drudge Report, zip on Yahoo.com, nothing. Well, I'm sorry. One story on Google News, most of the way down the page, about highlights military's treatment of mental issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks to me like they're sweeping that story of the sensational shooting right out of the mainstream news because
I
of all
wonder
the things.
why.
Well, let's talk about why.
I think we should definitely talk about why. It came out. This is the thing. Like we said at the beginning of the show, I don't automatically jump on these mass media events because if they're being that politicized and that shoved down the throats of everyone in the country 24/7 news cycle, there's a reason. They call that the CNN effect. They do it on purpose. It's to get people's emotions going about an issue so that they can, at the same time, distract you while they're also trying to force some new thing down your throat, like taking away rights, etc. But there was a report that then came out that Aaron Alexis, the suspected shooter, had contacted the Rhode Island police on August 7th, claiming that he was being stalked by 3 people, that they were following him, and that they were keeping awake by talking to him through the walls of his hotel room, the walls, ceiling, and floor, and that they were sending vibrations into his body using some sort of microwave machine that was penetrating his body so he could not fall asleep. And he told the officer that he never felt anything like that, and that he was worried that those people were going to harm him, but he had changed hotel rooms 3 times because he couldn't get away from these voices in his head from these people. So that came out, and as soon as that came out, I immediately went, and go time. Obviously anyone who's done even a scant bit of research into MKUltra, into extremely low frequency waves, into microwave weapon research, which is something our government has been involved in researching at least since the beginning of the Cold War. At least. Probably earlier.
They used, and this is just an example to the listener, I'm sure you already know this, Melissa, and I'm sure Aaron already knows this as well because you guys are in-depth researchers, but they were using back in the 80s to talk to submarines. That's how they talked to deep-sea subs that were like way down, hiding in the in the Atlantic or in the Pacific or wherever they were, waiting with their nukes, just waiting to push that button because that's what subs did. And that's pretty much what subs still do. They just go park somewhere and once in a while they'll cut square holes underneath the water and just cruise around. But they usually sit in an area waiting to get told to go blow something up with their cruise missiles. I mean or the ballistic missiles. I mean that's what they're for. That's what subs do. They're a delivery platform. You know what I mean? So if we're able to contact these submarines in the deepest depths of the ocean using ELF waves back in the 80s, I don't want to hear that it's impossible that in today's day and age they have some form of concentrated technology where they could zap it into your head. I know it exists. S-Quad tech. Look at Ventura talked about it. Yeah, I think it was
with Dr. Begich.
Yeah, it was Begich, and there was the other guy. I can't remember his name right now. He's Joe's friends with him. He's on Joe's show all the time. He had this it was pretty. I guess the ELF projector or whatever. It's like this square plate, and he turned it towards Ventura and towards the camera mic, and when he turned towards it, you could hear like what sounded like a babbling brook. And Jesse was like, "Yeah, I can hear it in my head," and he turned it away, and it went away. So he was beaming the sound literally into his head. And that's because, everything, our sensory organs are connected to our brain. So if they just beam it into our brain, remember, our reality is being interpreted by our brains and everything that it picks up from our eyes, our ears, our noses. So, and, the rest, touch, everything, and then we project it outwards too. So if our brain is that much of a sensory organ, think of how altered things could be for you if they actually can project this technology, these sound waves, at your head. Now, again, he's talking about how they talk to him through the wall. See, that's as soon as I heard that, I was like,
that's key.
Oh, God. And it stuck out. You know why it stuck out? Because I've interviewed people that were gang stalked before, okay? And like James Walbert. In fact, I got to have him back on. I want to talk to him about this. When I asked him the things that they did, and if people can go back in the archives, I think it was back in like 2011, go over to Federal Jack and just go to the archive section, click on Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye 2011, and it'll bring them to 2011 archive page. And one of the guys' names was James Walbert, and the other one I can't remember right now. But if you go
was
look,
it Dr. John Hall?
No, the other guy that I interviewed was like a state representative that they had done it to. The guy was like a state rep from out in the West there, and I can't remember what it is now because it's been so long, and you know how it is. Your brain gets so much crap in there. But anyway, it set off alarm bells because when they were describing, the crazy weirdness that this guy was describing, ha, 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 I was like, oh my God, that's the exact same stuff that they were doing to this guy and other people that I know. When I've researched this, if you look up gang stalking, that's what they experience. And when he said talking through the wall, beaming it into his head through the wall, I was like, and then he said ELF, bingo, that's what they can do. I mean, it's totally what they can do. And there are documents that have been declassified from the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, which talk all about that. I mean, it's on record. So it's not even like people think that's all science fiction because it's out of the realm of what they imagine exists. But just because they don't realize it exists and they don't think any technology is new until Apple gives it to them or something, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, this is something our government's been working on for decades now, and there's several declassified documents, but the one that I like to cite is was given to a guy for a FOIA request in 2006 entitled Bioeffects of Selected Non-Lethal Weapons, but it was actually authored in 1998, and it talks in there specifically about radio frequency directed energy weapons and how they can incapacitate someone with microwave hearing. And they call it microwave hearing. And this is February 1998. And they say in here that they had a successful demonstration of a speech-modulated microwave energy weapon, and that microphones next to the person experiencing the voice in their head, voice-to-skull technology, could not pick up the sound. So it was going into the person's head, and no one else around them could hear it. And they even talk about how they could use this technology to disrupt neural control and therefore activate specific kinds of behavior in a person, such as aggression. It's in there, you know. Well, if you look up ELF, even under Wikipedia, if you look up ELF, if you scroll down through and I'm not using Wikipedia as a resource at all, because, I mean, it's not a good resource page, it really isn't. But if you, even on Wikipedia, which is what I'm saying, even on there, if you scroll down and you look through, it'll tell you that high exposure to it, they even admit that it can cause nervous system agitation. Well, what do you think happens when people have anxiety attacks? Anxiety isn't a mental illness. See, that's the other thing. That's what I was talking about with the stigma mental illness, which the breaks come up in a few seconds, but we'll get into in the second hour talking about this whole shooting thing, because they're trying to stigmatize everything as being a mental illness, right? Anxiety really isn't a mental illness. It has more to do with the nervous system. So does PTSD. It has a lot to do with your physically being out of touch with your body and your nervous system. Okay? Interesting that this technology excites the nervous system. And then this guy went on a rampage that people said he was always a nice guy. Very odd. Perhaps we should start to look into ELF weapons, ladies and gentlemen. Look them up. ELF weapons. All right, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 3 short minutes. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is September 19th, 2013. And joining me again here in hour number 2, my good friends Aaron Dykes and Melissa Melton from Truthstream Media. You guys should check their website out and follow their reporting. Every day they release at least 1 or 2 articles, and they constantly, Melissa and Aaron, are doing videos. And I saw the one that you guys released about the stand down, and I liked how you did it, by the way, because it wasn't screaming, yelling, on a desk, pulling lights out of the ceiling, Chicken Little style. You were just very clear and concise, and it's
what I try to do.
Well, I notice your videos. I mean, usually YouTube actually blocks video counts. So, and I've noticed your videos after a day, they'll get 700, 800, 900 views. So I can only imagine that the views are probably well over 2,000 or 3,000 if they're showing that fast already. So that's good. I mean, people are paying attention to you guys. So before we get back into it, I want you to shamelessly plug yourself. Plug everything. YouTube channel, website, anything, everything. Go.
Let's see. We're truthstreammedia.com. We're on Twitter at TrueStream News, because that's all that would fit. And then it's youtube.com/TrueStreamMedia. So, and we try to work really hard. I mean, it's just the two of us, and we're doing all the jobs. So, but it was hard even doing that video because I just talked. I felt like I was talking so fast, and I kept trying to tell myself, speak clearly, so don't run over your words, because I had so much I wanted to say, and I was trying to get it all out within 5 minutes, and I still went over. But it just as soon as I saw stand down, because I've been reporting on this ELF thing for several days now. Because as soon as I saw that, I couldn't help myself. If we can push this to the forefront, because the only reason that this is allowed to, at first, whenever they said he's hearing voices through the walls, et cetera, right? They were using that, the mainstream media, as an excuse to make this guy look totally nuts. And that works only so far as people are ignorant to the fact that there are weapons that do that our government has been perfecting for 60 years. As long as you don't know that, then yes, that guy sounds totally crazy. Because it's just not something people know. But if we can get that information out to people and say, here, look at all these government documents. Look at what they've been doing for the last, half a century. Then maybe we can expose this to a level that, because here's the thing. Those kinds of complaints of hearing voices through the walls, that's not even uncommon anymore. People used to just think, oh, there must be just a big upsurge in schizophrenia going on. No. This is just becoming so common because a lot of people think it's because they're just testing it and perfecting it on people. Because, hey, what are you going to do if you think you're hearing stuff in your head and you go tell someone? Most people, their automatic reaction will be to think you're mentally unhinged. But, however, if you look at the now declassified CIA mind control program, MKUltra, and you look at some of the documents released from that, of which there are over 20,000, back in 1955, there was a MKUltra document that was released that actually said they wanted to look into all these weird, creepy substances and the things that they could do to you, and it's a creepy list. But one of them is substances which will promote illogical thinking and impulsiveness to the point where the recipient would be discredited in public. So that is a way to control someone. That is a way to control someone with their mind. If they can make you look crazy in public, no one will believe you, and they can do whatever they want. That's the whole point. And this is how many people have said this is how government assassins are made. Many people have said that, including some ex-military intelligence people who have come forward and written about these kinds of things. And they've straight up said that this, I'm speaking now of Julian McKinney. She's a former director of the Electronic Surveillance Project. And she self-identifies as a U.S. Army intelligence veteran. And she published several things on this exact thing with microwave harassment, mind control experimentation, and in her 1992 paper, she says the long-term objectives of these harassment and experimentation campaigns, where they talk to someone incessantly through the wall so they can't sleep over and over and over and basically drive them insane, appears to be to redirect the targeted individual's feelings of hopelessness, anger, and frustration towards racial and ethnic groups and towards select prominent political figures, and to force the individual to commit an act of violence, whether suicide or murder, under conditions which can then be plausibly denied by the government. So, right there, it spells it out. And actually, I got that out of a Washington Times article. So this kind of stuff now, in light of this Navy Yard shooting, stuff that if you and I had talked about it even just a few weeks ago on your program, people would say they are crazy conspiracy theorists. They're insane. That stuff doesn't exist. It's not even real. Now they're being forced to talk about it in the Washington freaking Times. And I just, my mind was blown because
I'll direct people to YouTube. Okay, you and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. Actually, one of the probably you guys came on twice that week. So it was probably we talked about mind control. I think it was on that Tuesday. So it was the two shows are actually up on the YouTube archive. People can go listen to them. But one of the last times you and Aaron were on, we talked about this, and I brought up S-Quad tech. Okay, and I brought up for people to say, "Oh, this kind of stuff doesn't exist." Okay, let me show you how it exists right in front of your face, and you don't even realize it. A couple years back, and I've brought this example up before. There was a billboard put out for A&E's show called Paranormal State.
I put that in one of my stories.
And I have the video up on YouTube. And they put that's why I said I'll direct people to YouTube. Type in mind control space S-quad tech used to beam sound into your head. And the video should pop up. It should be from my Federal Jack Tube 6 account, if I remember correctly. But if you go, you and I'm going to play part of the audio for you, and I'll let you hear it a few times because you have to pay close attention to it. But when you listen, the person's walking down the street. Now, the microphone, the way the mic works like the human ear. So obviously, it'll pick up the same sounds that the human ear would pick up, or else the microphones wouldn't work, right? So, and we wouldn't be able to hear things that the microphone was picking up, right? So, as the person with the camera is walking down the street, you'll hear in the audio, you're gonna hear background noise of the street, background white noise, whatever, from the microphone. But if you pay close attention, you're going to hear whispering, and you're going to hear a voice say, "Hey, who's there? Is somebody there?" And you're going to hear it keep saying things like that. I forget, and it said something else like, "Is there somebody behind you?" or something.
Not your imagination.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not your imagination, and it says it like that. But it's literally, and in the video when you see it, there's people walking towards the cameraman as they're, as they're coming up, as they're passing each other, and you can see they're pointing to the billboard that's on a building. And what it is it's a billboard for the TV show Paranormal State, and they have whatever transmitter device on the billboard aimed at a certain angle, so it's covering a certain portion of the block. So when you walk up, this one block portion of the street, you hear, "Hey, is somebody there? It's not your imagination."
They're beaming ultrasound waves on the people walking below on the sidewalk, and you have to be facing the billboard on a certain corner, because if you're on the other corner or in the street, you won't hear it. It's only beaming it to the people specifically in that small, narrow path. It's very creepy.
It's totally creepy. Here, I'll play it. It's really, really creepy. Even snoring dog in the background is kind of creeped out by it. Here, check it out. How creepy is that? How downright creepy is that? S-Quad Tech. And you can go look it up. Just go on, look up Mind Control. It's all caps. Mind Control space S-Quad Tech, and the video should pop up. I'll try to find the link so I can drop it into the chat room. But this is the kind of technology that is out there. And it's right in front of your face. Literally right in front of your face. As you're walking down the street. You're being bombarded. And like Melissa said, it's only a certain portion of the street. So if you were, the way the billboard is, it's up on the side of a building. You'll see it in the video. It's on the side of a building. So if you're walking up from like behind the building or whatever, or the block that's next to the building that runs parallel with it, you're not going to be in the line of the sound. The beam is emitted only to a certain portion of the block, but you can see as people are walking down that certain portion of the block, they're pointing up to the building trying to figure out where it's coming from. And obviously, you look around and you try to figure out, and when you look around, you see this huge billboard and it says, A&E, Paranormal State, ooh, spooky TV show, ooh, whispering in your ear, ooh, marketing. So, I mean, they use it right in your face for marketing. So you can't say that they wouldn't use this to control someone's mind and perhaps make them go nuts, right? I mean, it just reeks of it. What do you think?
Great marketing technique, that's for one thing.
It's creepy, dude. The first time I saw that, I was like, no way. And I had to keep rewinding it, and I was like, wow, that's real. At first, I thought that it was crap, and then I looked it up, and I was like, no, this thing actually was up. I don't know if the billboard is still up, but I would assume it's probably taken down by now because, field test under the guise of marketing, maybe?
Well, even those paranormal shows could be very convincing, but that's a whole other topic. And but just they've got it all right there, right? They can program assassins, they can discredit people publicly, and my instinctual sense is that they, to the extent they let this out, or to the extent this was going on, anything the guy said about it just makes him look crazy and more like the insane killer they want to portray, right? I mean, were they expecting the whole public to embrace the reality of this, existing but not very well known technology?
No, I don't think they were. Maybe they didn't realize that he carved it in there. I think that the release of it, I think when it came out, I think that what you see is damage control, and that's why they're laughing about it. Melissa was telling me off air earlier that I think that she said she had seen one conversation where the repeaters were saying, "Oh, elves, haha," and they had made a reference to like extra. Or extra fine women or something like that. Somehow turning it into an acronym for something stupid and joking around with it. And they have to do that because God forbid the American public actually go look up what ELF technology is, even though it's only been around for like 40 something years. It's not new. That's the worst part. You got to wonder how long they've been doing this to people.
But if it's more high tech than an iPhone, the public basically doesn't know whether or not it's real to a certain extent.
Doesn't that blow your mind though? You'll tell people, they can beam a sound into your head. Oh man, you're crazy. Really? You have an app on your phone that you can watch cameras inside your house and like listen and monitor your house if you want to. Well, yeah, man, that's technology. I totally believe that exists. Okay, but if I had told you 10 years ago or 12 years ago that you'd be able to have a phone the size of an iPhone and watching streaming videos and movies and whatever on it, and having Skype and having video. Skype didn't exist 12 years ago. If I had told you you'd have Skype and have video conversations, I'd be like, what sci-fi movies have you been watching lately? It doesn't even exist. Yet, here we are today using Skype. We do radio shows with Skype. So, you can't tell me that, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make any logical sense to me. So when you look at the general public, how ignorant they are at this, it's like I just shake my head. Because it's like you can accept that you have a phone that you can stream movies to. Right to your phone. You can watch anything you want, any TV show, whatever. But if I tell you the government has one step above that, no, I would know about it because my iPhone would tell me so. It's just like, ugh.
I mean, how many of these killers ended up complaining of something being done to them? I mean, I'm trying to look it up. I don't have the information in front of me. Didn't Charles Whitman, the UT Tower killer, say he had a chip in his brain, and it at least turned out that he had a tumor, I believe. How many of these killers complained about things being done to them?
There was Carl E. Campbell in 1991 that shot U.S. Navy Commander Edward J. Higgins 5 times with a .22 caliber, and later in court, the prosecutor said that he had been treated for paranoid schizophrenia because he believed the U.S. government had implanted a mind-controlling computer chip in his brain. So there's at least that guy.
Son of Sam. Talk to a hole in the wall? Talk to a voice that lived in the hole in the wall?
Seems like that would make an interesting compilation list.
Maybe we should work on that. Maybe we should research that. I mean, here's what happened with this guy. And why I think maybe they're burying the story now, and because it blew up in their face. They really want to push taking away people's Second Amendment rights, period. If they really want to take down America, they have got to get the guns out of the hands of the citizens, because that's what all of these regimes do. All of these tyrannical dictatorships, they take away the guns first. Stalin, Mao, all those people, they took the guns. That's what they did. And so they want to push this whole mental health thing, because that would encompass so many things. That's one of those slippery slopes. Once they started, it will never end. I mean, you looked at somebody funny in kindergarten the wrong way, up mental health. They'll just take it away. And especially with Obamacare, where they've tied everything together, and then you have Obama's 23 executive orders that he signed after Sandy Hook, 7 of which were mental health related and have to do with turning doctors into snitches in regards to mental health issues and whether or not people own guns. So it's all related. It's all tied together. However, this is blowing up in people's faces because so many people know about gang stalking and having microwave weapons directed at people and hearing these kinds of voices in your head that are generated by such weapons. I mean, people know this. This is actually not, the general public probably doesn't know this, but a lot of people have done research on this, and there are declassified documents. They can just pull them up like, cha-ching, here you go, here's the proof. So there are enough people that know about this, and enough people that this has happened to, that there are support groups for it all over the place. So it's a thing. There's a report on local San Antonio KNS5 News affiliate down here where they interviewed people who said this was happening to them. So, and these are not, crazy people, homeless people mumbling to themselves on the side of the highway or something that everyone can be like, oh, yeah, that guy's got an alcohol problem or whatever. This is like people in really rich neighborhoods that look like they have all their stuff together and should not be talking like, I hear voices in my head and I've got stuff going on in my house and all kinds of things are weird in my life. But that's what it was. And the thing is this guy was, as far as I've read, he went to Thailand, he converted to Buddhism, he spoke Thai, he was very polite. I mean, by all accounts, he was a normal dude. I mean, he wasn't just flipping out all the time. I mean, he did have, though, some instances which also could play into this, of blacking out and not remembering things that were happening to him, which is also an MK Ultra technology situation.
But you know what really kills me is this guy had, they gave this dude clearance to get on the military installation. I mean, where he was not someplace that, your average, E2 or E3 or, sailor or airman or marine or soldier would have access to. You'd have to have some sort of clearance and a reason to be there. It's not like they just mill around and there's a PX
I wonder
there.
why they gave him that clearance.
And the guy had issues where he had shot people's tires out and stuff before. It's not like this guy was perfect John Q. public citizen and then went to the store, bought a gun, and then snapped. And you see, it's the mental health thing. People just go crazy when they buy guns. Guns make people kill people. This guy was shooting at people, shooting things up, shooting through the floor, shooting at people's tires over the course of time. So, I mean, if anything, maybe it's a failure to enforce the laws that are already on the books and should have clearly stopped this guy to begin with. Well, his background check didn't show anything. Well, who does the background check?
That's true. You could also speculate, however, those incidences sound very strange as well. If you actually read into those incidences, that's a little weird.
Oh, they could have been beaming into his head.
They could have been testing him out. Because the whole idea with these assassins is that they're blanket sleepers, that they're activated.
Set them up. What you want to do is
who's like, I was in my kitchen cooking with oil, and then I was like, I'm going to clean my gun next to the oven. Whoops, I shot the floor. Come on, how often does that kind of stuff happen, really? Or I had a blackout rage and just went to town blowing up someone's tires with my gun. What?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And then when I came to, I couldn't remember a thing. This is not something that normally happens to people, but this guy, by all accounts, in recent times, wasn't really doing much. And then all of a sudden, he's going to cops on the 7th saying he got into an altercation with someone in a Virginia airport. And then 3 people started stalking him. Now he's hearing voices in the walls. And he's changing hotel rooms because he doesn't know what to do. Then on August 18th, you have him going to a Buddhist temple and begging them to let him spend the night because he's having noises and voices in his head and he can't get rid of it. And they won't let him because he's not a monk. You have to be a monk to stay there. And he's begging them to because he cannot get it out of his head. Then on the 23rd, you have him going to the VA saying, please, I need something for insomnia. I can't sleep. But then at that point, he's wised up and he's just saying, oh, it's due to work. Because at that point, he realizes if I tell people I'm hearing this stuff in my head, I can't, And then 5 days later, he runs out of his medication. Then they put him on the trazodone, which is not just an antidepressant, but it's one that makes you go to sleep. So it's not like you take the trazodone and suddenly you're jazzed up and shooting up places. The trazodone is a sedative antidepressant. It makes you sleepy.
That's the problem. This is the problem. This is what I was talking about earlier when they start talking about the pro-gun lobby and they start saying, it's always mental health. It's mental health. We need stronger mental health laws. Be careful what you're wishing for, and perhaps maybe you're being set up. That's why I said these people know the art of the long con. Does anybody understand what I mean when I say that? I know you guys do, but
I do.
The listeners have to understand the art of the long con. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, go do some research. Okay, they think ahead of us in terms of 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 100 years. Okay, you're thinking ahead maybe 6 months. They're thinking ahead years in advance. Yeah, what they're doing is they're working a nerve. I guarantee you, and you. Why do you think you hear how does Piers Morgan always close his arguments? I hope we don't have to have this debate one day, but until the laws change, there will be more mass shootings. Well, how does he know that? I mean, how does he know that a law will stop these mass shootings. Even when it's come out, when the people pushing this stuff admit, yeah, a law really wouldn't prevent a mass shooting, but yet they still keep pushing that key thing. We need laws to prevent mass shootings, and the only time this will stop is mass shootings. It's talking points. That's why he always closes his anti-gun rants with that crap.
I mean, how many laws are on the books? Hundreds.
Well, but what does he say? There's going to be another one, Melissa. Well, Pierce, how do you know that? How would you know there's going to be another mass shooting unless a law comes into play?
I've been given the list.
That's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, there's an agenda, and what they're doing is they're poking. And I'm not saying when I say they, I don't mean Piers Morgan. That guy's just a mouthpiece. He's like a slipper on, or like a wart on their big toe. He has nothing to do with the hierarchy.
We mean people who are best expressed in interdimensional terms. Just kidding.
Nice.
Aaron, what do you think? Do you see what I'm saying about the long con? They're doing this to work the nerves over the course of time, so finally the public just loses it? Yeah,
they've been doing this with air travel, too, by way of example. Isserby pointed this out to me, but it occurred to me as well, but she's definitely got a point that all the complaining about TSA is well justified. They're very much a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's ridiculous. They've never caught a terrorist. They're fondling and harassing children and old people especially. They got caught making fun of deaf people and calling them deafy and stealing their candy. They've been caught smuggling drugs and stealing from passengers, and it's just a real pain in the ass to go through the airport, frankly. And it makes no sense, and it's against common sense. It's against laws. It's against the rights that we're supposed to have. But what's it leading up to? Well, we already have a flavor of what it's leading up to. It's the Trusted Traveler Program.
Biometrics.
It's first voluntary, then later required biometrics to travel.
It's people saying, well, if you don't like the TSA harassing your 3-year-old and sticking their hands down his pants so you can go to Disneyland, all you have to do is give over a little bit of your biometrics in our Trusted Travelers Program, and then you won't have to deal with the TSA anymore.
And that requires biometrics and a background check. Where's that headed in 10 or 20 years, like you say? Virtually nobody traveling without specific authorization. High-class business people traveling frequently. Average mom and pops going on vacation. We'll see, but I don't think so.
Dark New World Order out of controlled chaos. That's
basically
they run by that. They create the chaos, and then they come in with their look. We've got the solution, but it's always an A or B solution. You ever notice that? You can never have more than it. That's the magic of their con,
and they always suck.
Well, that's the art of that's part of the art of their con. Okay, the illusion of choice is there. Look, you have A and B. They might sometimes even offer you a C, but it's all crap, all of it. Okay, none of it is real. They always tell you. Usually, it's only one or two. It's only A or B.
Usually.
And what they'll do is, left or right, whatever, Democrat, Republican, they always break it down to A or B. And then you have to pick from one of the two. And they force you to take a side, see? They pit people against each other, and then they play people off.
Two lessers.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, pertaining to your specific question about mental health, it's going to get to a point where people who do need help won't seek it because they know, at least many of them know, it's going to cost them some of their rights to go seek treatment because everybody knows you're going to get background checked
with
and flagged.
This Aaron Alexis, that's what happened with him. Is ultimately he stopped telling people he was having this problem, but it was going on for weeks before this shooting, and then all of a sudden you've got reports coming out now that he carved my ELF weapon and Better Off This Way into his gun.
Yeah,
Why do you think he was better off this way? What do you think that means?
Right, like why? How is killing people and going nuts and knowing he's going to probably get killed himself being better off?
Did they tell him he would finally get to sleep?
Good question, Melissa. Ponder that during the break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I am personally convinced, okay, I am personally convinced that this whole thing with these mass shootings, obviously, yes, there's the whole pushing against the Second Amendment, but at the same time, I think it's a double whammy. And I think they're also getting us to ask, we need tighter mental health restrictions. And that's a real slippery slope because even the mental health community can't decide and can't agree on what's mental health issues and what's not.
That's why they keep putting out DSM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and which is just a bunch of guys sitting around in a room deciding on symptoms.
Well,
and at this point,
5. I'm trying to get my hands on a copy so I can literally tear it apart on air.
Go to town. Well,
I have
supposedly
the 4th edition, but I want the new one because the new one even coffee drinking. If you drink too much coffee, they consider that a mental health issue.
It's every emotion. The new one, every emotion.
Coffee, Melissa. Did you have how much chocolate it was in your milkshake, Melissa? Did you have too much chocolate in your milkshake? That could be a mental health issue now. I mean,
well, I already have a mental health issue because I'm asking questions about this instead of just
believing
what CNN told me.
Do you think the government pulled off 9/11? That's a mental health issue. According to the FBI.
Do I believe the official story? Hell no. Yeah, I do think it was an inside job.
You're also a terrorist. I'm
sure that I am.
You could possibly be. I can't make this up. They released this to the police and law enforcement agencies nationwide. They released this memo in the past couple of days. If you think 9/11, if you believe that the CIA or anything else, if you believe basically anything other than the official government, lie, that you could possibly be. It's an indicator of possible terrorist activity. I.e., you could be a sleeper cell. A sleeper terrorist cell because you say 9/11 was an inside job or whatever, however you pronounce it.
Wow.
Because they say that's a predominantly anti-Western stance, and that
we live in the Terry Gilliam movie Brazil. That's just how it is. There's just this nebulous terrorism everywhere, and everybody's afraid all the time, and it's going to get to the point where these mass shootings happen or whatever on the news, and they're just trying to scare people, and no one's even going to care anymore. They're not even going to pay attention anymore. It's going to take over the news cycle, and people are just going to yawn and stretch and roll over. They're not even going to care because they're just it's silly. It's getting to the point where it's silly, and if people die, that is a very sad thing. Do not get me wrong, I care about that, but at the same time, the way that they politicize these events and exploit them for a system of control is just silly. It's ridiculous. We went to break and I had a question, but I have several more questions for you. What do you think about these questions? I'm just going to throw this out there. Can you imagine having voices talk to you directly inside of your head for weeks on end? What if you went to authorities only to find out they thought you were insane? And what if those voices wouldn't stop? And what if they commanded you to do something you didn't want to do, something unspeakable, over and over and over again, even invading your sleep without any reprieve for weeks? What if those voices finally promised you rest and promised you that you would be better off this way if you just did what they asked? That's the questions. This is scary. If they can do this to anybody, they can do this to anybody they want.
And this isn't a sci-fi flick either. This isn't.
This is the reality we live in. They can do this to anybody. And think about that. If you had voices in your head for weeks and you couldn't sleep and they were doing stuff. I've read accounts of people that have been targeted with these weapons and they'll just suddenly make their arm move, against their will, or their legs will just go numb for a really long time, or they'll just heat their bodies up.
Again, a basic search, even of Wikipedia, which isn't the greatest source of info, but even if you go there, that's like the last place I would send you, right? Because most of that stuff is all propaganda crap, the official version of whatever, and anybody can go on there and change things around. But even if you go on there and you look up ELF waves, at least for now, down somewhere through the description, I know it's in there, you will see that it explains that, and of course it goes off the, studies are kind of inconclusive, blah, 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 blah. But it shows you, and it even says there, that extreme exposure to these waves can cause your nervous system to go haywire. What, doesn't your nervous system control everything, Melissa? I know I've learned a lot about my nervous system after having like 9 operations in the past 5 years. You learn a lot about nerves and nerve pain. Okay, most of the operations were for nerve issues, especially my arm. And I can tell you what, just from my personal experience. Okay, nerves are a very interesting thing on their own. Now, can you imagine if someone knows how to manipulate them somewhat by using a piece of technology? Because, again, this technology is not new. It's old. So, I'm sure that maybe 40, 50 years ago they weren't thinking of beaming it into people's heads, but somewhere along the line, somebody had the idea, and they tried it, and they figured out that it works. It doesn't, just because this stuff sounds like mad scientist type things. Let us remember one thing. I had a conversation with last time I had Jim Mars on. I brought this up, and Jim Mars wanted to make this specific point in particular. These people who lit off the first atomic weapon, even though the Nazis did it first, when they did it here in New Mexico, okay. At least half the scientists were convinced that they were literally going to ignite the entire atmosphere of the planet on fire and kill everything. I want you to remember this. These guys that did this test, at least 50% of them literally thought they were going to kill everyone and everything on the planet, and they went and did it anyway. Okay, so what does that tell you about the mad scientist type qualities of these insane people that are out there, right?
Yeah, and during that same test, the head of the thing said, it reminded me of the passage from the Bhagavad Gita, now I become death, destroyer of worlds. And the same nuclear scientists in 1958, the same year they discovered the Van Allen radiation belt, they tried to blow it up with nukes.
These people are crazy. The people that are running things are just completely insane.
What is wrong? What is wrong with us? Seriously,
so messed up.
Why do you think when people are like, I love when, like, I'm going to throw this out there, when people are like, well, how come aliens don't publicly come about? Really? Look at how we handle things. We're like primates at the zoo, dude. We fling poo at each other, and we can't even get along over what tree or piece of sand is ours and whose imaginary friend is better, let alone dealing with some other intelligence. I mean, that's a whole nother level. We can't even get along on this planet. I'm telling you, we've got to be the most interesting reality show in the universe.
Probably.
You know this quote by J. Robert Oppenheimer? About now I become death, destroyer of worlds?
Mm-hmm.
He was the head of the Manhattan Project.
Yeah. Then he turned around after it was over and advocated one world government because of the Manhattan Project. And so did a bunch of other guys that were involved in it too.
Well, I'll steal Einstein's
problem, reaction, solution.
I'll steal Einstein's quote, even though he was pushing for one world government with it. You can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. So, if you put that against the powers that shouldn't be, they want to solve every problem with an equally, like, we need to be violent and beat the crap out of you so you can't be violent and beat the crap out of somebody else. But I wasn't going to beat the crap out of you.
We need to bomb Syria because Syria bombed Syria.
Right, exactly. Like, you're not going to solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created. So we need to think outside the box no matter what it is. And see, they don't want that because they can't control outside the box thinking. Only on the very edges of the box can they have maybe somebody try to, maybe be a faux outside the box thinker and try to lure people away. But no. In people, you know how you get around that too, right? Don't follow anybody. It's that simple. I don't want you to follow me. I don't call my listeners my followers or the people that follow me. I don't even like using that term on Twitter. I don't like the word follow. I even struggle saying the word reader or listener. Okay.
I got trouble with the Facebook likes. I mean, I don't like everything they're posting, but I like the fact that it's being brought to attention.
But you know what they do that for? YouTube did the same thing. Back in the day, YouTube used to have an actual fair rating system with the 5 stars. They got rid of that and they simplified it to like or dislike. One of the reasons they did that was people, without even realizing it, self-censor videos. Because something will come up and they'll have an emotional reaction to it, and I don't like a video about kids being killed by drone strikes, so they hit dislike, right? But by hitting dislike, that actually affects the ranking system, how the video is viewed. But it's not presented that way. It's presented of, hey, do you like the video, or did you not like this video? A or B, one or the other. They took away the 5-star rating system and gave it a choice A or choice B. They now...
just to change the topic for a moment, Einstein, I mean, that's an interesting guy. I mean, I don't know if he believed in informed speculation, but I got a lot of questions about these public personas they built up for people, and I think they warrant further investigation. I mean, who built up Einstein to be such a legend? And how come guys like him and Edison are always working at patent offices?
And Bill Gates.
What an inspiring place to work, you know what I mean?
A patent office.
Well, no, actually, it's a good place to work if you're going to steal somebody else's stuff and then claim it.
That's what I mean, like, what an inspiring environment. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink, nudge,
Wink,
nudge,
wink,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
uh-huh.
Well, now I'm just going to change the subject for a third time for a triple whammy. Just back to this for a moment. I'm really just so freaked out by the idea. Not just I have researched these weapons. I have researched MKUltra. I have researched all of these different things that they're doing. I mean, they've got a guy up in Canada that's got the God room, and he puts you in a chair and puts a thing on your head and makes you feel like you're outside of your body and you're in some nebulous God space or something. I mean, there's all kinds of messed up stuff going on in the world with this kinds of technology, but they've had it for a really long time. It's on record, and most people don't realize they can do this to anybody, anyone. If this is the government that had MKUltra, they were snatching 2-year-olds off the street and giving them LSD. I mean, they were doing all kinds of stuff to people. Our government was doing that, period. On record, declassified, it's there, it exists. And they have these weapons, and they can make you hear stuff inside of your head. And they can do it to you.
You realize that being in a sound deprivation chamber, I forget where there's a picture of one I've seen, and I forget where exactly it's located, but it's so quiet in the room that people would have hallucinations because of the
lack of sound.
Yeah. Now, can you imagine if you took and blocked your eyesight too, and you took away your vision, you just tie a blindfold.
Look what they did to the Gimmo people.
Well, but what I mean is your own brain could make you hallucinate and make you see things, or you know what I mean. Your own brain, your own self, just being in a sensory deprivation chamber. That's also why I isolated. Isolation? Where they lock you in the hole for like 30 or 60 days. That's torture. It's total torture because eventually you will start to hallucinate and talk to yourself and talk to the wall, make friends with a cockroach or a rat that's in the room with you, and they know that. But if your own body can do that to you, think about what they can do with an external source beaming into your body. So this isn't science fiction. I wish that this was all made up and that we were talking about hoo-ha, holy baloo, ha 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 ha, but we're not. Okay, unfortunately, this is a reality, and it's scary. And the only way to deal with it is to A, admit that it exists, and B, come up with a logical solution on what we should do. Okay.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing. They can do this to anyone. And how long would it take you? I mean, everyone needs to think about the fact of how long would it take you to crack under that kind of circumstance. If you've got a voice in your head. And then I was thinking to myself, how do they get people to participate in this? Who are the people that would do that? Well, probably, since everything in our government's compartmentalized, my speculation says these people are probably brought in to record a couple sentences or a paragraph, and then they probably just replay that stuff over and over and over, So those people probably don't even realize what they're a part of. But how long would it take you personally to crack if you're having a voice continuously in your head? You can't shut it off. There's no volume switch. You can't put earplugs in because it's emanating into your brain, so it's right in there. There's nothing you can do to make it stop. It won't stop when you want to go to sleep. It won't stop when you're out in public. It won't stop when you go visit your grandma. It's never going to stop. It just talks to you. And how long would that take if they're just telling you to do something really bad over and over and over again? And that if you just do this, it'll make the voice go away. I mean, he scratched better off this way into his gun with my ELF weapon. Better off this way. I mean, what did they tell him? You'll be better off because you'll finally get some rest. We'll finally stop the voices in your head that have been driving you crazy for weeks, and you've been going to police and the hospital and monks complaining because you can't sleep, and you've taken drugs and you've done all these things and it still won't stop. I mean, how long would it take an average person to crack? Because I think it's a lot less than most people think if they were actually put in that situation. And they have the technology with Gwyn towers and HARP frequency arrays and all this stuff, all the microwave towers that are all over, the cell phones, the whole nine. They've got this capability. I mean, that's the thing.
And the question of when would they crack has been studied, not particularly to microwave technology, but back in World War I, I mean, World War I, in terms of political agenda, was about, consolidating empires and eliminating competition. But for the average person, it was ultimately pointless. It was a lie. But what they did do was put a couple million people in a meat grinder and let them kill each other. And then they studied people who were in that war and what it took for them to reach the breaking point. And they came to general conclusions about what the average person can sustain and how long it takes them to break down and under what conditions.
And that's what they're doing with this. And there are a lot of people that have come forward and with these kinds of stories, to the point that, like I said, there are support groups. You can find them everywhere on the internet for people that have been suffering from these kinds of things. And they're the average, everyday people that have not had any... Because schizophrenia, that comes on in your late teens, early 20s on average. That's not something you just get later. It's not like you're 55 and suddenly, whoop, there's my schizophrenia flaring up. That doesn't really happen, And schizophrenia used to be super, super uncommon. Hardly anybody had that. That was not a thing. Now all of a sudden it's all over the place, and they're doing major studies for it and major hospital systems all throughout the country because it's just such a thing.
Yeah, how about links to vaccines like the flu vaccine and other things? How about that?
How about the fact that they can put nanochips into such things?
That's what I'm saying. How do you know that? How do you know that that's not what's happening? That's why these people have,
I think it's totally what's happening. I mean, there are patents out there. There was one I came across just the other day that had to do with chipping someone's tooth with a microchip in your tooth.
And by the way, that's not old. You know that back in like the Cold War, back in the 60s, they were looking into, implanting chips and stuff into people's teeth and making them hear things in their own head. Like they could beam radio signals using because the way our heads and the way our ears and everything is shaped, they knew that they even knew back then. So if they had this rudimentary technology back then, imagine what they have now.
Well, and there's the jokes about people with plates in their mouth or in their head who pick up the radio frequencies. Remember 12 Monkeys, where the tooth was the tracking chip?
Yeah. Exactly. This
science fiction or something else.
Fact. This is from June 1998. Intraoral tracking device. This is a U.S. patent for an intraoral tracking device adapted for use in association with a tooth, and it says it can transmit and receive electronic signals. I mean, it's right there. There you go. So, I mean, but there's a lot of patents for all of this technology, and a lot of it matches up with that list from that 1955 MKUltra document where they wanted to be able to do all kinds of horrible stuff to control people. And they call it substances, but what's the difference between a substance and, say, microwave weapons? There's really not that much when you consider the semantic games these people play. But the thing is, they can do this to anybody. And we're like cattle. We're like cattle living in an electronic control grid. I mean, that's what's going on. And when you say that, people are like, you're crazy. It's on record. This is how they are talking about it.
Well, you're crazy, that finger pointing, that's Pavlovian training. That's what that is. That's the finger pointing is straight up Pavlovian training. It's the Skinner method, as Charlotte Iserby would talk about. It's basically when we're kids, we're trained that if it's weird or strange, you point and laugh at it.
Exactly.
Why do you think kids get bullied in school, right? Because if they don't fit the norm, maybe they dress all in black or they like heavy metal or whatever, the kids point at them and, they're dirtbags. I mean, that's what they used to call us when I was like, I don't know what they call kids now, but, the metalheads or whatever, or you're a skateboarder or you're a jock. We're already programmed from childhood like that. You know what I mean?
I think you're a couple decades out of the current fashion, but I get your point.
Well, dude, I'm going off of what I remember. I have no idea what the hell I have no idea who gets bullied now for what.
What I hear, the kids are, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just
perhaps they don't even.
I feel old now
anymore. They probably all I gotta say is Justin Bieber. And by the way, we're going to be judged in the future by 200-300 years from now. Future generations of humans are going to be like, really? Really? Like future societies are going to look
Really? Back. Miley Cyrus and twerking just captivated you for weeks? Really?
Bam! Exactly. They're going to look back at all this because we're putting it out there, so it's archived. They're going to look.
Apparently, Piers Morgan is less obsessed with this shooter than he is with what Billy Ray Cyrus thinks of Miley Cyrus twerking as a father.
He's been tweeting to Billy Ray Cyrus about it. That's
I think he had a big interview with him or something.
Pierce should have asked him why he said that his daughter on multiple occasions that he's worried that his daughter worships Satan. And
he should have asked about that. He should have asked about that.
I would have been like, so Billy, you're a hardcore Christian, right? Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, Mr. Achy Breaky Heart, I heard that your Achy Breaky Heart is crying over Achy Breaky Satanism. Well, what's up with that? But no, Piers can't talk about that because, hey, I mean, you're not allowed to talk about satanic.
Just don't think you'd understand.
Nice.
I swear to God, dude, I would love to steel cage match him with you and like tag team. I tag you in. Come on, drop the people's elbow, Aaron.
People's elbow. We're so old. No, okay.
Yeah, because I have no idea. I have like no modern references when it comes to that.
I don't either.
I still call it the WWF, and people are like, "No, dude, it's the WWE." I'm like, "Oh, that's right. The World Wildlife Foundation got all up in arms."
Yes, the UN-loving WWF just couldn't stand it.
Right. So that's how old my references are, and thank you for pointing that out, Aaron.
So we're right there with you.
I guess I'm not cool, but I'm cool enough that I saw a WWF panda slamming like a chair on another panda wrestler's back or something.
And got the reference. It happens.
I guarantee you, a whole generation of people that wouldn't get that reference. You know, when I think of WWF, when I think of the World Wildlife Foundation, I think of their tacky ad where they had like 1,000 airplanes flying into the World Trade Center all at once. And they were equating that to like global warming somehow, or something like that, or I forget exactly how it was supposed to correlate. But that was, every day there's this many things, or whoever animals, or whatever the hell it was that die.
Was it the polar bears falling out of the sky or some crap?
Yeah, this was this one was airplanes flying, like a bazillion airplanes flying into the buildings. But I'm sure there were probably airlifting polar bears, and they were parachuting in polar bear special forces to fight Al Qaeda.
Yeah, I think I remember that one.
From what I understand, that's our new plan in Afghanistan. We're going to bring in polar bear special forces trained by Al Man.
Did anyone catch Billy Ray Cyrus in that weird David Lynch movie? I guess that's not very. They're all weird, so I guess it doesn't really.
That really doesn't help me. They're all really strange.
Which one isn't strange? How about that?
I want to say it was Mulholland Drive, where he's like the.
I have not seen that movie. That's one of the ones I have not actually seen. So
Billy Ray Cyrus. There you go. There's the.
I really probably won't watch it now, but because you said he was in there. But I mean, he's the guy that's like, I just don't understand what's going on with Miley. I just don't. Gee, you think you fed her to the Disney machine? What do you think happened to her?
He doesn't know what's going on.
He totally does. He's just plausible deniability, and I'm just such a good. I love God and my daughter. I don't understand. Yeah. It's just. I guess I will probably let this Navy Yard shooting story go and another couple of stories after I continue to expose this. But if I can just get this pushed into the faces of a couple more people that didn't know that those kinds of weapons exist and it's something that our government is doing against people all the time. I mean, I just contacted Dr. John Hall, who wrote a whole book on it. And I think I'm going to get him on and actually do an interview with him and talk to him about it because it happened to him and a bunch of his girlfriends that he had because they were trying to get to him because he was talking about it. And he's helped a lot of patients with it and has dealt with it extensively. But it's just one of those things now that what really floored me about this wasn't even just that. It was the fact that then it became like in the mainstream media, they were openly admitting that they use these kinds of weapons to manipulate the weather. And, and that they just make government assassins with them, like you do.
The Weather Channel, Melissa, made a series, and I don't know how long it was on for, but the commercial, I'm sure you can still find it. I ripped it from YouTube, so I have a copy of it somewhere. But they actually made a series or they had a show where in the series they were talking about weather control. And the Weather Channel the commercial was like, hey, controlling lightning, making it snow in the desert or whatever, or making it rain to make crops grow? Oh, weather control. Sounds kooky? It's true. And this was the Weather Channel openly admitting it within the past 6 months. Just look up Go on YouTube. See? I'm sure if somebody goes on YouTube or Google, or I hate to give them advertising, but that's where I'm sure you'll find it right off the bat. Look right there and just look up Weather Channel show admits to geoengineering, and I'm sure articles and versions of the video will pop up, and you'll see it all over the place. It's right in our face.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff that if you and I had sat around chatting about this casually just a few months ago, again, crazy conspiracy theorists, what are you talking about? You're insane. Shut up your nuts. Like, go medicate yourself. Now, they're just, blasé, just putting it in there. They're just like, and extremely low frequency waves can also be used to command the weather, blah, 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 blah. Like, whoa, what?
It's right in your face. There's a universal law that I've talked about that I think they subscribe to, but we'll have to get into that another date because the end of the show is actually sneaking up on us. Guys, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, check their website out, truthstreammedia.com. They are an awesome power couple for truth. I love you guys, and I love all of you listening. I'll catch you again tomorrow night. We're out of here.